I got a psychiatrist and I got a proper diagnosis after what felt like years of getting soft diagnosis and misdiagnoses, and I'm able to get medicated help and it keeps my mood stable.
Kehlani has exposed everything in a shocking confession. The pattern of toxic relationships that nearly killed her has been hiding in plain sight since she was a teenager.
I had to go into foster care for a second because nobody could claim me, because my mom had to dip to jail after she had me.
While fans celebrated her soulful voice and vulnerability, Kehlani was surviving exploitation by industry predators, betrayal by men she trusted, and public humiliation so intense she tried to end her life at just 21 years old.
This is actually psychotic. It's actually diabolical. I found a stack of Polaroids of all the women that he cheated on me with. He was keeping them in Polaroid form.
The cycle of trauma continues today in a custody battle involving cult accusations, abuse allegations, and a daughter caught in the middle. And Kehlani is finally ready to tell the whole truth. So, let's get into it. Long before Kehlani Ashley Parrish became one of R&B's most emotionally raw voices, she was born into tragedy on April 24, 1995, in Oakland, California. Her father, who struggled with drug addiction, died when she was just a toddler, leaving her with no memory of him beyond photographs and stories from family members. Her mother, battling her own demons with substance abuse, was in and out of jail throughout Kehlani's childhood, incarcerated so frequently that she couldn't provide the stability a child desperately needed. Kehlani was born premature and sick, literally going through drug withdrawals as a newborn baby because of her mother's addiction. Without intervention, she likely wouldn't have survived those first fragile months of life. Her aunt stepped in to save her, adopting Kehlani and quitting college to raise her niece as her own daughter.
She quit college to raise me. She was going to become like a court reporter. She just was about to make bread, like nobody in my family really went to college except for like a couple, like my uncle, maybe my mom for like 2 seconds of her life. And so she gave up everything and had me in her house and forever.
Kehlani's mixed heritage, African American, Native American, Caucasian, Spanish, and Filipino, made her a target for bullies who couldn't understand or accept her appearance. She didn't look black enough for some kids, wasn't white enough for others, and the constant questioning of her identity created confusion about where she belonged. She found refuge in the performing arts, enrolling at the Oakland School for the Arts, where she initially studied dance with dreams of one day attending Juilliard. Dance became her escape, a way to express emotions she couldn't verbalize about loss, abandonment, and the complicated feelings she was developing about her own sexuality. But during junior high, a devastating knee injury ended her dance career before it truly began, forcing her to pivot to the school's vocal department. At age 14, a classmate suggested she audition for his father, who was managing a local cover band. That father turned out to be Dwayne Wiggins of Tony. Tony. And when Kehlani nervously sang for him, he immediately recognized her potential. She became the lead vocalist of Pop Life, a teen pop cover band that performed classic soul songs at local venues.
All right, let's rock and roll. We're here with Dylan and Kehlani from Pop Life, the act that some people think could win the entire thing this year. What's the pressure like?
The pressure is intense. It's so insane because we did an amazing...
For the next 3 years, from ages 14 to 17, Kehlani spent her adolescence performing in clubs and at events, singing other people's songs while her own identity and artistic voice remained undiscovered. She was being groomed for the industry long before she understood what that meant, learning to perform on command, to smile through exhaustion, to present herself as a product rather than a person. The patterns established during these years, pleasing others at her own expense, sacrificing authenticity for approval, accepting exploitation because it felt like opportunity, would define her relationships for the next decade. In 2011, when Kehlani was just 16 years old, Pop Life auditioned for the 6th season of America's Got Talent. The group's performances impressed judges and audiences, advancing them to the semi-finals, where they ultimately finished in 4th place. For a teenage girl from Oakland who had grown up in poverty, the national exposure felt like a dream coming true. The group appeared on television screens across America, their faces and voices broadcast into millions of homes.
Oh, I swear the world better prepare for when I'm a...
But behind the scenes, the dream was already curdling into a nightmare. The management handling Pop Life was exploiting the young performers in ways they were too inexperienced to recognize or fight against. Kehlani would later reveal that they were 16, getting robbed and getting taken advantage of, with management taking the majority of earnings and making decisions that served their interests rather than the teenagers' well-being or career development. When America's Got Talent ended and Pop Life's moment in the spotlight faded, the group fell apart amid contractual disputes and resentment over how they'd been treated. Kehlani left the group but found herself trapped by the contracts she'd signed as a minor. For 6 months, she couldn't pursue music independently without risking a lawsuit from the management company that had exploited her. At 17 years old, having sacrificed her normal teenage years for a music career that had imploded, Kehlani found herself effectively homeless, moving from couch to couch, sleeping wherever friends or acquaintances would let her crash for a night or a week. She had no money for food and began stealing iPhones to sell and shoplifting groceries just to survive. The experience of homelessness at such a young age was traumatizing in ways that would affect her for years. She got tattoos compulsively during this period, initially telling herself it was about becoming who she really wanted to be, but later admitting she got so many because she hated herself. The ink was a form of self-harm, a way to feel something other than the crushing despair of having no home, no family structure, and no future. During her senior year of high school, Nick Cannon, who had hosted America's Got Talent during Pop Life's run, reached out and invited her to Los Angeles to be part of a rap group he was forming.
So like my heart bled. I was like, yo, I gotta go find her. Like just when you said there's a 16-year-old homeless, and like I remember at the time it was like, yeah, she's all tatted up now and all that. I was like, I don't care about the tats. Like I just want to make sure she's okay.
The rap group with Nick Cannon didn't work out. She didn't like the direction and didn't want to perform raps she hadn't written. But Cannon believed in her talent and connected her with producers in New York to work on original music. In late 2013, Kehlani released her first solo track, Anti-Summer Love, on SoundCloud. The song showcased a vulnerable, introspective style that was completely different from the polished cover performances she'd done with Pop Life.
I don't need no summer.
This was Kehlani's real voice, raw and honest, processing pain through lyrics that resonated with other young people struggling with identity, relationships, and mental health. The exploitation she'd experienced, being used by management, sexualized as a teenager, robbed of her earnings, would inform every relationship decision she made going forward, creating patterns of choosing partners who mirrored that early betrayal. Kehlani's debut mixtape, Cloud 19, released in 2014, changed everything. Complex named it one of the 50 best albums of that year, and suddenly, the girl who had been sleeping on couches and stealing to eat was being hailed as R&B's next big thing.
I finally realized, you know, like you don't have to rush, especially not with your first project. You really want people to like grasp you for you. So I took a step back, kind of like really refocused on what I wanted the music to sound like and focused on my sound.
The mixtape's success led to her signing with Atlantic Records and recording her second mixtape, You Should Be Here, released in April 2015. The project debuted on the Billboard 200, eventually went gold, and earned Kehlani a Grammy nomination for Best Urban Contemporary Album at just 20 years old. Songs like You Should Be Here showcased her ability to write devastatingly honest lyrics about love, loss, and longing, delivered with a vocal style that felt intimate and conversational rather than overly produced.
Baby, you should be here, right here, babe.
But even as her career was taking off, Kehlani was processing trauma from a relationship that had left her emotionally destroyed. Around age 19 or 20, she discovered that a boyfriend had been systematically cheating on her throughout their relationship. The discovery itself was horrifying.
This is actually psychotic. It's actually diabolical. I found a stack of Polaroids of all the women that he cheated on me with. He was keeping them in Polaroid form.
The calculated nature of the betrayal, the fact that he was documenting his conquests and carrying them with him, felt diabolical to Kehlani. The psychological damage from this relationship would affect her ability to trust partners for years, creating anxiety and hypervigilance in future relationships where she constantly worried about being deceived again. In 2015, Kehlani began a relationship with Canadian singer Party Next Door, and by late 2015, they had broken up. Kehlani, freshly single and emotionally vulnerable, met NBA star Kyrie Irving at a party. Irving was one of the league's biggest names, talented and famous with resources that seemed to promise the security Kehlani had never had growing up in poverty. By January 2016, Kehlani and Irving had confirmed their relationship publicly, appearing together at events and on social media in ways that suggested serious commitment. For Kehlani, the relationship represented stability. A successful man who seemed mature, responsible, and able to provide the kind of partnership she'd been seeking. But the reality was far more complicated. Irving was still emotionally entangled with ex-partners, and Kehlani was still processing trauma from previous betrayals. Neither was ready for the relationship they were trying to build, but they were publicly committed, and the pressure of fan expectations made it difficult to acknowledge that things weren't working. What happened next would trigger a crisis that nearly cost Kehlani her life and would haunt her for years to come.
What was important is just realizing what happened during that time and just speaking on it, and then everybody moving past it. Like, bro, just leave that in the past. Like, we're not together. She's incredibly happy. She's an incredible person, and she deserves the world. Like, go get it.
On March 29th, 2016, Party Next Door posted a photo to Instagram that would destroy Kehlani's life. The image showed a woman's hand, later confirmed to be Kehlani's, resting on him in what appeared to be a bed. The caption and timing suggested they were together romantically, implying that Kehlani had cheated on Kyrie Irving with her ex. The photo went viral within hours, and the internet exploded with hundreds of thousands of posts accusing Kehlani of being a cheater, a liar, and worse. What the mob didn't know, and what Kehlani would later try to explain, was that she and Irving had actually broken up before she reconnected with Party Next Door. The overlap that looked like cheating was actually her attempting to move on from a relationship that had already ended. But the public nature of her relationship with Irving meant that any new connection would be scrutinized and judged. That same night, Kehlani took an overdose. She ended up in the hospital, where she posted a photo from her hospital bed with a caption that made clear she had wanted to leave this earth. The suicide attempt shocked fans and industry peers, immediately shifting the conversation from judgment to concern. But for Kehlani, the damage was done. She had hit a bottom so low that death felt like the only escape from the pain. The weeks and months that followed were a blur of therapy, medication adjustments, and the terrifying work of rebuilding a will to live. She was diagnosed with depression, ADHD, OCD, and PTSD, a constellation of mental health challenges that explained the overwhelming emotions she she'd struggled with her entire life. She had been medicated as a child, which had dulled her personality, and she'd stopped taking medication as a teenager because she hated how it made her feel. But now, survival required professional help. Kehlani later realized that her public mental health crisis, as traumatic as it was, gave her a platform to help others.
And I got a psychiatrist and I got a proper diagnosis after what felt like years of getting soft diagnosis and misdiagnoses, and I'm able to get medicated help and it keeps my mood stable and I'm here and it keeps me like, I would absolutely recommend it to anybody.
In the aftermath of her attempt, Kehlani channeled her pain into music that was even more raw and honest than her earlier work. On January 27th, 2017, she released her debut studio album, Sweet Sexy Savage, on Atlantic Records.
I think that my fans should expect a lot of fun on this album. I just tried to keep it relaxed and I didn't try to out-weird myself or be extremely innovative, which I know was probably what people were expecting, like some groundbreaking innovative situation, but
The album was a triumph, debuting at number 3 on the Billboard 200 and selling 58,000 copies in its first week. The title reflected Kehlani's 3 sides: sweet like honey, sexy in her femininity and sensuality, and savage in her willingness to fight back and speak her truth. The success of Sweet Sexy Savage led to major opportunities. She toured with G-Eazy and Demi Lovato, exposing her music to massive audiences. She collaborated with Eminem on the song Nowhere Fast and with Cardi B on Ring, proving she could hold her own alongside hip-hop's biggest names. Her collaboration with Hayley Kiyoko on What I Need was particularly significant. Both artists were openly queer women, and the song celebrated same-sex desire in a way that mainstream R&B rarely did. Kehlani had come out publicly as queer years earlier, revealing that she'd had her first girlfriend in 9th grade before breaking up with her because she didn't know what she wanted. She'd struggled with the false binary of gay versus straight, eventually realizing she could be attracted to people regardless of gender. Her openness about her sexuality made her an icon in the LGBTQ+ community, particularly for young queer people of color who rarely saw themselves represented in mainstream music. In 2017, she released her mixtape While We Wait, which included the song Nights Like This, featuring Ty Dolla $ign. The song became a massive hit, reaching the top 10 on multiple charts and going platinum. Around 2018, Kehlani began dating guitarist Javon Young White. The relationship seemed healthier than her previous partnerships. Young White was creative, supportive, and not a celebrity seeking attention. He understood the music world but wasn't competing with her for spotlight or validation. When Kehlani discovered she was pregnant in late 2018, she was both terrified and hopeful. She'd always wanted to be a mother, seeing it as an opportunity to give a child the stable, loving upbringing she'd never had. But pregnancy came with its own challenges. She experienced prenatal depression, posting on social media about how difficult pregnancy was for her mental and physical health. She also faced scrutiny about her sexuality. Some fans questioned whether she was truly queer since she was pregnant by a man, as if bisexuality didn't exist, or as if queer identity required constant performance and proof. On March 23, 2019, Kehlani gave birth to her daughter, Adea Nomi. Motherhood transformed her, giving her a purpose beyond music and a reason to fight her demons rather than surrendering to them.
Are you working on a new album?
You know I'm working on a new album, girls, coming next year. New album, dance, new...
By September 2019, Kehlani had split from Javon Young White and began dating rapper YG, whose real name is Keenan Daquan Ray Jackson. YG was a successful West Coast rapper known for hits like My Hitta and Big Bank, with a street credibility that contrasted with Kehlani's more introspective, emotional brand.
Most likely I'ma die from a... I've been grinding that side all day.
The relationship was public from the start, with both artists posting photos together and attending events as a couple. Fans who had watched Kehlani's journey were hopeful that she'd finally found someone who could match her intensity without triggering her trauma. But the relationship was troubled from the beginning, built on passion rather than genuine compatibility or shared values. YG's lifestyle and approach to relationships clashed with what Kehlani needed as a new mother trying to maintain sobriety and mental health stability. In November 2019, just weeks after they'd gone public, photos surfaced of YG kissing another woman outside a Los Angeles club. The images were undeniable. This wasn't a misunderstanding or innocent interaction. This was blatant cheating. For Kehlani, who was still processing the trauma of her ex's Polaroid collection of conquests, the public humiliation was devastating. But the club incident wasn't the full extent of YG's betrayal. Kehlani later revealed that she had seen his phone, discovering messages that were very deep and intricate, suggesting an ongoing emotional and physical affair rather than a one-time mistake. The depth of the deception, combined with the public embarrassment, triggered all of Kehlani's trust issues and abandonment fears. She channeled the pain into music, releasing You Know What's Up, a track that directly addressed the relationship's toxicity and YG's betrayal. The lyrics pulled no punches. She called out his lies, her own foolishness for believing him, and the cycle of choosing men who hurt her.
Why I gotta beg to be chosen over your vices?
The song resonated with fans who had been through similar betrayals, becoming an anthem for anyone who'd stayed too long in a relationship they knew was wrong. But creating art from pain didn't erase the emotional damage. Kehlani was a single mother in her mid-20s who had now survived multiple high-profile relationship disasters, each one reinforcing the belief that she wasn't worthy of faithful, committed love. The pattern was undeniable. She kept choosing men who cheated, lied, and prioritized their own desires over her well-being. During this period, Kehlani also reconnected with singer Victoria Monet, with whom she'd had a romantic history that hadn't been public knowledge. In August 2023, Monet confirmed in an interview that her song, Touch Me, was about Kehlani, revealing a past romance that had been long rumored but never acknowledged. The revelation added another layer to Kehlani's relationship history, showing that her connections with women had been just as significant as her publicized relationships with men. It also highlighted how much of Kehlani's romantic life had been lived in secret or semi-secret, either because she was protecting her privacy or because societal expectations made it easier to be public with men than with women. The double standard, where her relationships with men were scrutinized and judged, while her relationships with women were erased or minimized, reflected broader issues about how bisexual women are perceived and treated. Around 2020 to 2021, Kehlani began a relationship with rapper 070 Shake. The relationship marked a significant shift. This was Kehlani's first publicly acknowledged relationship with a woman, representing a new level of openness about her sexuality. The relationship changed how fans perceived Kehlani. Some celebrated her authenticity and bravery in being publicly queer despite the backlash and judgment that inevitably came. Others questioned why she had hidden this part of herself for so long, as if the decision to come out publicly wasn't deeply personal and complicated. Kehlani explained that she'd struggled with internalized homophobia and the false binary of having to be either gay or straight, finally realizing that her attraction to all genders was valid and didn't require explanation or justification. The relationship with 070 Shake eventually ended, but it represented growth in Kehlani's journey towards self-acceptance. In 2020, at the height of the pandemic, Kehlani released her second studio album, It Was Good Until It Wasn't.
Don't make me feel bad for loving at my big old age. I can't be fair.
The album debuted at number 2 on the Billboard 200, her highest charting album yet, and featured collaborations with Tory Lanez, Masego, and others. Tracks like Toxic and Can I explored the push-pull of unhealthy relationships and the difficulty of maintaining boundaries when you're desperate for love and connection. The album's success proved that Kehlani's fanbase was growing rather than shrinking, despite, or perhaps because of, her willingness to document her messiest relationship moments. Her openness about her sexuality continued with various relationships and situationships that were sometimes public and sometimes private. She dated Kiara Russell for a period, and there were rumors about other connections that Kehlani chose not to confirm publicly. In April 2021, she posted a TikTok video explicitly coming out as gay, though she later clarified that she uses the term as an umbrella for her queer identity rather than exclusively meaning lesbian. The ongoing clarifications and explanations highlighted how difficult it is for bisexual and pansexual people to have their identities understood and respected. Society constantly pressures them to pick a side, rather than accepting that attraction can be fluid and multifaceted. For Kehlani, whose mixed-race identity had already taught her about not fitting into simple categories, her sexuality was just another aspect of her refusal to be easily defined or boxed in. In August 2024, Kehlani's personal life exploded into public scandal once again when Javon Young White filed for full custody of their daughter, Adea. He alleged that the cult leader, identified only as Nito, had convinced Kehlani that Young White was a danger to Adea and would kill her, leading Kehlani to restrict his access to their daughter. He further claimed that Adea was being cared for by cult members while Kehlani was on tour, sleeping in beds with adult strangers and being bathed by people Young White didn't know or trust. Kehlani responded on August 6, 2024, posting a statement to Instagram that called the media coverage incredibly hurtful, inaccurate, inappropriate, and simply untrue. She strongly denied putting her child in harm's way or leaving Adea alone with anyone dangerous or unsafe. She clarified that she did not align with the allegations made against her former religious community, explaining that she had previously practiced Santeria, an Afro-Caribbean religion based on Yoruba and Catholic beliefs, but that the media's characterization of it as a cult was offensive and wrong. Young White also released a statement criticizing TMZ's coverage, saying that a factually incorrect version of his custody request had been published and that he didn't need to paint an unfair image of his co-parent for his feelings to be respected by the court. He later posted on social media, apparently in response to fans calling him weird for airing out these issues publicly, writing that Kehlani had things going on that had traumatized dozens of people. He expressed deep regret for perpetuating claims about the cult and acknowledged that Adea was no longer affiliated with Nito's community when allegations against him surfaced. As of 2025, Kehlani is 30 years old and navigating the most difficult chapter of her life. The custody battle with Young White remains ongoing, with both parties ordered to attend mediation to develop a mutually agreeable parenting plan. Kehlani was granted temporary sole custody and a restraining order against Young White after alleging that he had created an unsafe environment, destroyed her property, and exhibited volatile behavior. Young White has denied these allegations, claiming that Kehlani is the emotionally abusive one and that he severed contact due to her behavior. The he-said-she-said nature of the dispute makes it impossible for outsiders to know the full truth, but what's clear is that a 5-year-old child is caught in the middle of a painful conflict between two parents who are both claiming to act in her best interest. Musically, Kehlani continues to thrive despite personal chaos. Her third album, Blue Water Road, released in 2022, peaked at number 13 and received critical acclaim for its mature, introspective approach. Her fourth album, Crash, released in 2024, peaked at number 25 and continued her exploration of toxic relationships, healing, and self-discovery. She released her mixtape, While We Wait 2, in August 2024, featuring collaborations with Lucky Day, Vince Staples, and others, recorded entirely at home in just 2 weeks. She collaborated with Glorilla on a Christmas trap song in December 2024, showing her continued relevance and ability to work across genres. Her voice remains one of R&B's most distinctive, and her willingness to be vulnerable and honest continues to resonate with fans who see their own struggles reflected in her music. Anyway, that's it for the video, folks. Bye.